Good day, brothers and sisters. This is Andrew here from the Gospel Donkey channel, from the Talking Donkey channel. We're going to do a quick video today on emergency preparedness as a timely reminder of the things that we should keep in our mind, and we should prepare ourselves for that which is to come. We're going to be discussing priorities of survival, shelter, water, food, medical, cooking, heating, and emergency evacuation. Before we get into the video, just a few quotes here. Here's from President Gordon B. Hinckley. He says, I wish to urge again the importance of self-reliance on the part of every individual, church member, and family. None of us knows when a catastrophe might strike. Sickness, illness, unemployment may affect any of us. We have a great welfare program with many facilities for such things as grain storage in various areas. It's important that we do this, but the best place to have some food set aside is within our own homes. Together with a little money and savings, the best welfare program is in our own welfare program. 5 of the 6 cans of wheat in the home are better than a bushel in the welfare granary. Close quote. So President Hinckley is saying it's much better to have our own individual food storage and self-reliance than to rely on the church or to rely on government or anything else. As we know, because of pandemics, roads can be blocked. It can be difficult for people to get to other people's houses and to distribute food. So it's imperative that each of us as individuals become prepared. All right, a quick scripture, Doctrine and Covenant 78, verse 14. That through my providence, notwithstanding the tribulations which shall descend upon you, that the church may stand independent above all creatures beneath the celestial world. And also, we don't forget the section 138:29. But if you are prepared, you shall not fear. So there's tribulations and things going to come upon us, and we need to stand independent. You know, many governments and if they have a disaster, they pull in resources from other states from all over to deal with the disaster. But if multiple disasters occurred at the same time, multiple things went on, the government will be woefully unprepared to deal with them. It was only a few years back we had a major storms here on the east coast of New South Wales, and it took 2-3 weeks. One of the sisters in our ward for the emergency services to get there and remove a tree that had fallen onto the roof of a house. And in between of that, you know, the rain just kept coming in the house. So we as a people need to be independent. The time will come when you'll not be able to rely on government sources. Okay, so what you're going to talk about here is the hierarchy of survival. The rule of threes, what is really known in those that follow the survival and preparedness groups, they call it the rule of threes. They say 3 minutes without air, and you go unconscious and you die. 3 hours without shelter. Now that would be in a very harsh environment, high desert or extremely bitter cold out in the snow. 3 hours and you'll succumb to hypothermia. 3 days without water. Generally, we need to drink water on a regular basis. It's one of our key priorities. And then 3 weeks without food. So an emergency survival situation, we do not focus on food. In fact, you do not partake of any food unless you have more than adequate water to drink. Because the body can survive many days and many weeks without food. So air is things we need to consider is air filters, dust masks. You know, if you have heavy bushfires, a lot of smoke, a lot of dust in the atmosphere from earthquakes or whatever, can be a struggle to breathe, and it could cause us major problems. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is shelter. So we all got homes, places where we stay, our main residence, but things can go wrong. You know, you can have the roof can get damaged by hailstones, tree branch or strong wind can pick up your neighbor's deck chair and throw it through your roof. Then you've got to be sitting with a problem. Or you might be forced to evacuate your house. Then you're going to need some form of shelter to keep you secure and prevent hypothermia and prevent the issues that we've spoken about. So from an emergency preparedness point of view, every household needs to buy a tarp, right? We've got an example of this blue tarp here on top of the house. You buy them at Bunnings. Occasionally they sell them at Aldi's. Very cheap, only costs you a few dollars. So you buy a tarp with some rope. You can use that to fix holes in your roof. You could use that to, if your house is totally destroyed, was flooded or something happened to it, fire burnt it down, you can go out and you can make a shelter with it, right? You don't need to go out and buy an expensive tent. All you need is a good ground sheet or a tarp with a little bit of rope, and you can give yourself that bit of comfort. During an emergency, you don't want to be sitting outside in the rain getting all wet, and especially if you've got young children or pets with you. So also as part of our shelter, we should look at having at least a hammer, some nails, so we can do minor repairs, a crowbar. We are in an earthquake area, not a high-risk earthquake area, but in case we need to enter a building or we need to extract something out of a damaged house. Leather gloves, axe, machetes, wood saws, those type of things we should look at when we're talking about shelter. So moving on to the next priority of survival, talking about water. So the good thing about considering the priorities of survival, if things go wrong, people generally tend to panic. They tend to run around like a chook with their head cut off, make poor decisions. But if you can keep these priorities of survival in your mind, so something goes wrong with your house, or a disaster happens somewhere to a family member of yours, we can then consider the priorities of survival, make a checklist of the things we need to do, and then we can focus on those issues. Or if the police come and knock on your door and say, hey, you got 5 minutes to evacuate, there's a flood coming or there's a bushfire coming through your area, what do you grab and take, right? Consider these priorities, and then it's easy. You can be focused, no need to panic, get the things you need, and you can leave. So talking about water, they say the average person needs about 3 liters of water per day. That's for drinking, cooking, washing, hygiene. So what I do is I get these frozen cold drink bottles, these plastic ones, 2 liters or 1.5 liter bottles, put 2 or 3 of them, about 80%, 90% full of water, put them in the deep freeze and freeze them. It has 2 advantages. One, if the power trips, it'll keep your deep freeze frozen for much longer and prevent the heat loss. Plus, you can then take out that water and you could drink it. We can look at getting water drums. Most houses in New South Wales, the newer houses, have water tanks. Have a way to get the water out of your water tank from your roof collection system. But that water is not always healthy to drink, so we should look at water purification, right? And if there's a flood or something comes through, we need to look at ways of purifying water. So main ways of purifying water to remove salts and germs out of water is to either boil it or freeze it. Now, freezing is a very complicated process and takes a lot of energy. Boiling the water and evaporating it, as you can see here on the right hand side on the slide, is a solar store. Just a box, put seawater in there, dirty water from the river, anything in there. The heat of the sun will evaporate that water. Only the clean water will evaporate up, hit that plastic layer, and then you need just a decant system. It's a very slow process, but can give you enough water to stay alive. There are more active methods so you can boil water in a pot, put a pan lid or something over it to collect that water, collect the steam that runs off there, and then put that into into a pot or something, and you'll have clean water to drink. And there's other things, water filters that we can purchase, where you can just put whatever dirty water you want into your water bottle, push it through the filter, and it'll come out clean. Now, from a cleaning water perspective, if water is contaminated or you have to drink water out of a dam or a lake, right, the easiest way to kill all the bacteria and virus in the water is just to boil it. So you just bring it to a boil, and then you switch it off. It doesn't have to be boiled for 3 minutes or anything. All bacteria and stuff, 99% of everything dies at 66 degrees centigrade. So all you got to do, but it's difficult to tell what the temperature of the water is, but water boils at almost 100 degrees, 98 along the coast. So you just bring the water to a boil, take it off, and let it cool down. Once it starts boiling, that's fine. All your bacteria is done. Food storage, I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but the church's main premises is that we should have 3 months of day-to-day food that we eat, everyday food, and we should rotate that. And then a 12-month supply of staples, rice, beans, honey, which is basically no shelf life, it lasts forever. Dehydrated food, canned foods. Part of our food storage, you can go out and spend $10 and get a bag of vegetable seeds, right? So if something comes on, if we end up in a problem where there's no food, we can plant those seeds, and in time we'll have food to eat. Cheapest way to store food is buy a bag of rice, put it in the deep freeze for 2 or 3 days. It'll kill all the mites and any weevils that are in the grain. And you can just take it and put it in a cold drink bottle, seal it up, put it in a dark area where it's not exposed to sunlight, and it'll last for years. Also, preferably if you have them available, you put a little oxygen absorber in there so it removes all the oxygen out of the food. So the main issues with food storage is heat, temperature, and oxygen. So we try as far as keep sunlight out of it, keep it in a cool, dark place, and fill the cans up as much as possible to remove oxygen, and also, if available, put in an oxygen absorber. So moving on to the next topic, that's medical, right? We should all have a first aid kit in our house, in our homes. We should also be trained and have a number of people in our households that have a basic understanding of medical, basic first aid, right? Now, you buy a standard first aid kit, and it's got your main gauze, your bandages, maybe antihistamines, in case you got stings. It's got stuff in there for burns and things like that. But so these are some of my suggestions that we should add to our first aid kits, right? Extra painkillers. You do not know how long the process might last. The disaster, you do not know. People might be injured. There might be issues getting to formal medical attention. Now, I've also worked in many remote areas, and I had a home doctor who was very experienced medical professional who had done work in refugee camps in very remote areas and very rural areas out in Africa. And he said he gave me a prescription for 2 things to take with me. One, he says I should take some gastrostrop or some anti-diarrhea medication, and long life antibiotics. Now, in an emergency situation or in a disaster situation, we do not want to get sick. We do not want to end up with diarrhea. The very early church history, when the members moved around, they suffered from diarrhea. Cholera outbreaks was common. It's something you do not want to be dealing with. And also, because of a lack of hygiene, lack of clean water to wash your hands, and those type of things, high risk of picking up stomach problems. So put some extra GastroStop into your first aid kit. Extra disinfectant. Extra gloves, masks. As we know, masks good for pandemic or preventing of transmission of illnesses and removing of dust. So high bushfire smoke, a lot of dust, maybe an earthquake can also stir up a lot of dust. At least you got a mask. To sunglasses, cooler box. So cooler box, long-term prescription medicine. You should keep a healthy supply of long-term subscription medication. And sometimes your prescription medication needs to be kept cool. So a way to keep long-term prescription medication cool is to put it in a cooler box, fill it up as much as you can with ice or other frozen products, meat or whatever you have in your freezer or deep freeze. Put a wet towel around your cooler box and totally soak it with water and keep it wet. So the evaporation of that water off the cooler box will keep it cool for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. If you keep it out of the sunlight in a cool, windy area, so you keep your cooler box with a wet towel over it and you keep it wet and soaked. You can soak it with anything, seawater, water out of the river, as long as it just got moisture on it. Okay, moving on to the next item. It's cooking and lighting, right? We need to, loss of electrical power is very common. Our power grids are overextended. Big issues with greenhouse gases and political events around that. That there's been no investment in power generation in Australia. In fact, most of the Western world for a very long time. And our power facilities are basically at their limit, right? It doesn't take much. A very hot day in summer, and then they start doing load sharing, and you can get power cut. So now if a disaster happens and a couple of power stations get damaged, something goes on, big storm takes out the power lines, we're sitting without power and we need something to cook with. So the most common thing that we can have to cook with is a gas stove. Have a little, in the top right hand corner here, just a little butane burner. Just put a little gas canister down there and it'll cook. So those things are relatively inexpensive, cost you $20 and another $20 or so for healthy supply of butane. Other options is to have a wood barbecue. There's plenty of wood in this area to be found. What I do is I go around here, if you look at the bottom of the screen, I go around during council cleanup time, and when people put out their old barbecues, for getting taken away, I'll go in there and stop by and I'll take the steel grates out of them because they work very well. The older grates are also much thicker than the newer ones you buy. You can just get a few bricks, build a fire on the ground, or take a wheelbarrow, fill it full of sand, put a few bricks on it, put a fire on there, put the grid on top, and you can cook on that, boil water, cook your food, whatever needs to be done. Also, another thing that people forget to have a healthy supply of, and that's matches and gas lighters. You need a number of ways of starting fire, not just one old box of matches that you can't find during the emergency. Keep a number of boxes of matches with you. And also with lighting, you need a torch or spare batteries. We keep a number of wind-up torches that have got radios with them as well. So you never run out of batteries. You just have to keep winding it, and then you can listen to the radio during the emergency. So another thing that we've been encouraged to keep together is a 72-hour emergency kit. That's for in case of a forced evacuation from our homes. That you often see on the TV, the guys just run out of his home, there was a fire, and all he's got is his shirt on and his pants on. That's it, no shoes, no ID, no bank cards, doesn't have any documentation or anything, just everything lost in the fire, right? We need an emergency kit. Now the list of equipment here, if you go into New South Wales Rural Fire Service, they give a list of what they recommend you should have in the kit, right? Portable battery operated radio, waterproof torch, first aid kit, candles, matches, something to cook with, emergency blankets, spare clothes, cash, ATM, credit cards, medications, special requirements for infants, mobile phone and charger, combination pocket knife, drinking water, and a change of clothes for everyone. Now, there's a lot to be said about emergency kits, and there's a lot of YouTube videos on them. I'm just going to show you a small snippet of one from a female YouTuber who calls herself Pepper.
Natural disasters seem to be increasing. Currently we have the devastating wildfires in California, and then there are hurricanes like Laura, which was a Category 4 when it hit Louisiana, and floods like the one earlier this year in Michigan when the Edenville and Sanford dams broke. And just a couple weeks ago, North Carolina had a 5.1 quake. And of course, there's always the worry about the possibility of the big one in California. And we see landslides and mudslides. And there are some not so natural disasters, such as oil train derailment resulting in fire in Saskatchewan that caused the entire nearby town to evacuate because of the air pollution. And of course, chemical spills and gas leaks. So often this means that people have to flee their homes on foot or by their vehicle. And their life would be a lot easier after fleeing if they had a grab and go bag. Maybe your grab and go bag is a backpack like this. Not everybody uses a backpack for a grab and go. For people who the bag is maybe too heavy or they just know they can't carry it well, you know what? A roller bag is just fine, right? You can easily roll it back, and it doesn't strain on your back. So think of a roller bag luggage also. In some cases, your grab and go is going to be a vehicle kit. And this is the Canadian Prepper's bag, and it works great for storing all your prepping supplies right in your car. And also, if you're interested, I have a video on a very lightweight kit that really packs a punch for survival. And I even have a way that you can wear a fisherman or photographer's vest and keep it equipped with all the supplies you need, but make it much easier to hike instead of, again, having that weight on your back. So check out those videos too. I'll link them below, and hopefully in either corner here I'll have a link. So it's up to you to use a backpack, a rolling bag, a vehicle kit. It doesn't matter as long as you have a kit and you have the right items in it. So let's talk about those items. Today I'm going to go over some of the things that I think are essential, what you have to have in a bag. So let's start with water, right? We all know we need it. We need even more of it if we're hiking. And of course we might be carrying it in a water bottle. But to carry enough that you need for 24 hours or 36 hours can get pretty darn heavy. So some of you might have backpacks that have the bladder in the back, you know, the little tube so you can take a drink when you want. But you should also think of water for purification methods. These are two.
Okay, I want to make you watch the whole video. I'll put a link down of a video down there. What she goes on to all the items that she recommends should be in your emergency 72-hour kit. So in any disaster, generally first responders say that people that survive the first 72 hours generally come through all right. It's the initial steps you take during a disaster and what you have with you that makes a huge difference in survivability for the first 72 hours. And if you get through the first 72 hours, then generally there is assistance coming to help you. Okay, so I've got a quick giveaway for the primary and the youth. Got these little portable stoves. They take a little fuel tablet, you put them in, they're just like pocket size with fuel tablets. You put them in there, you can boil water, as you can see on the top right hand of the screen. I've got 3 of those, and I've got 1 hurricane lamp with a bottle of oil. Now it's a miniature hurricane lamp That bottle of oil will last you a couple of weeks, depending on how often you use it. So give a comment in the video, or put a comment on in the Ward Facebook page, and I'll put your name up for winning one of these, just to get you started on your putting together your bug out bag and getting your emergency stuff together. Okay, let me know if you have any further questions.